And welcome to our weekly live stream. I'm really happy today because we are going to have a completely technical discussion for a long time. We discuss with people who has opinions about stuff, but today I choose to bring someone from the grass, someone who experienced relationship-based access control by implementation, by engineering. I actually watched a talk from her about OpenFGA at the KubeCon in Europe I think it was like half a year ago. And she's also going to participate a panel that I'm going to lead at the KubeCon next week about the showdown of policy engines. So I'm really happy to be here today with Pauline Jamin, who is a staff engineer on Agicap. I'll let her introduce herself soon, but beforehand, like every week, some announcements. So first, everything is recorded, everything is live. So if, for example, you need to drop off, you need to go home or something, just feel free because we'll send a link with all the discussion after. So don't feel committed to just watch the live stream. We'll also have a Q&A time at the end of the live stream. So if you have any questions that you don't feel comfortable to ask live, you can wait for the end, but we really like to answer questions live. So if we say something and you immediately ask some question about it, just comment, no matter where you're watching us, could be LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are watching us, just drop a comment there and we see that here and we will answer that hopefully live or at the Q&A at the end. And as every week, I really want to say thanks for Permit that allow me to do this thing as part of my job and sponsoring everything related to the live stream. And with that, let's start. We are going to talk about relationship-based access control today, or ReBAC. I know it's a hot topic. And Pauline, I'll be happy if you can introduce yourself.
Yes, so hello everyone, I'm Pauline. So I live in France and I work for a company called Agicap, which is a company doing a SaaS in financing, basically dealing with treasury. And I've been in this company for 4 years now, and I'm responsible for a team of 6 people, and we are implementing IAM, so identity provider and access management for Agicap.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, we also have a guest from Agicap here, Thomas, who is a VP of engineering that I also came through a blog post he wrote about domain-driven design, also a topic that I'm interested in, and relationship-based access control. It sounds like Agicap has real engineering excellence. Do you want to tell us about it? I mean, usually fintech consider like a old technology companies, but Agicap really sounds like a great engineering company.
Yes, actually, we have a lot of great engineers. I think it's from the beginning, the founder of our company and the CTO, Lucas, he really wanted to put quality in the heart of our solution. So he hired only seniors engineers, and Thomas, which is our VP, like you said, is a very specialist in DDD and a lot of things. Is really well known in France and Europe. So we have fostered a real culture about engineering in our company. So I'm glad to hear that it's working.
Yeah. So that's great. So again, we're talking about relation-based access control, but I bet we have some listeners who are not that familiar with that. So I'll do you like this. I know it's not trending anymore, but let me go back to the 2020, 2021, explaining like a 5. What is relationship-based access control?
Okay, so basically, it's a model that determines relationship between entities. So imagine a playground, and you can play only with a child that are your friend. So if you have a relationship with this child, you are friend, you can play together. If you don't know each other, you don't have a relationship, you can't play with each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation, but it has more details. We'll go to that later. I think is a fair enough for a 5 years old. I'll say that from my perspective, main like the main advantage of relationship is actually, and I'll say that because I'm not explaining for a 5 years old anymore, is about the derivations and the implicit grants of permissions for
Yes.
someone who is not directly related.
Yes.
And I think it also enables people to do fine-grained authorization because, as Pauline mentioned, relationship-based access control between me and another kid in the playground that is my friend, that's explicit grant, is my friend. But most of the time, we don't have these explicit relationships. We want to do implicit relationships. And this is where it's actually came really handy, but we'll get to these details later, I promise. And what do you think made relation-based access control and fine-grained authorization in particular that popular for the last couple of years?
Um, I don't know why it's so popular, but my guess is that people have experienced ReBAC, so role-based access control, and
Mm-hmm.
it can be really tricky because I think when you have roles, it's for example, you need to have roles for everyone. You know, like if you are in the army business, maybe it's easy because it's really structured. So you have a captain, a general, etc. So it's easy to put people into roles.
In roles.
Yes, but in roles.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a business with a lot of customers who are very different from each other, like us, you will have a role per customer basically. So it will be a mess to manage. So with relationship based access control, it's easier because you don't have this roles you need to manage. You just say, okay, I want this action to be protected by your permission, like for example, send an email or invite a user on a company or something. So it's very fine grained, and then you decide in your modelization who has this relation. And like you said, it can be explicit or implicit because I'm part of a group, I'm part of a company, of an organization, or because I have also a role. So you can combine all these conditions together, and it's compute at checking time. Like when I check your relation, I say, hey, does Gabriel has this relation? And because you are part of a company, etc., etc., the model answers yes or no. So I think it's why it's so popular because ReBAC, I think we were all doing this. Everyone was doing role-based access control, and everyone
Absolutely.
was like, it's too complicated. We have too many roles anymore, so it's too complicated. There is no one fits all roles, so it's basically every time we need to create a permission, we need to create a role associated with it. So it can be very, complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. I must say that in general, role-based access control is, as someone who does developer relations, and for example, at conferences, I tell people authorization, they don't understand what I'm talking about. I tell them permissions, they don't understand. Fine-grained permissions, they don't understand. When they understand when I say RBAC, that's when people understanding the problem. And I think you count something from the engineering story point of view, which I really like. I think it has inside the two main challenges. The first one is the problem that you described, which is role explosion. I think everyone who is in identity access management experienced this problem. I just have today a meeting with one of the permit customers who is from an healthcare, from HMO, and he just start modeling in our system, and then he came and say, hey, look what I modeled. And I look at the table and I saw like 50,000 rows. And I said, what is it? What is that? And he said, I don't know. That's the way our system work. And I say, no, you shouldn't work like that. And he say, yes, but we need to give permissions.
Yeah.
And it's really connect to what you're talking about. You say, if you want to do fine grained, you can do that with RBAC, but the engineering challenge of role explosion and just manage tons of roles for thing, ReBAC just simplified because of the explicit. You can really do that. One of the things that has also a lot of popularity for the last year is Google Zanzibar, a paper where Google described their way to do relationship-based access control in ReBAC. Do you think that what came first, the need with fine-grained authorization and fine-grained ReBAC, or Google Zanzibar affect this trend?
I think the need was there before because actually there was a paper describing ReBAC in 2007. So I think ReBAC was invented like 20 years ago,
Yeah,
and just Zanzibar popularized it.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, so that makes sense that it's actually really make it such popular. One of the things that when Thomas, when he was here, he mentioned that what he really like about ReBAC is the expressiveness.
Yes.
Expressiveness is the way that you express permissions. And I really want you to say what you think about this expressive, but I think that was one of the main points about Zanzibar. If you look at Zanzibar, it has some implementation details. It explained the implementation detail, but it mostly put the focus on the tuples and the way that you actually declare the tuples, the way that you actually express the relationships and the relationships permissions on a relationship-based access control model. Do you also think that this expressiveness is a critical thing for relationship-based access control?
Um, I don't know. It's a great question. Um, hmm. I think for us, the problem was not the role explosion because we only had like four roles in Agicap before, but we didn't have a clear vision of our permission system because I had like four roles. And when when the product manager when they were asking what this role can do in a product, I was unable to answer because I would have to look in the code and look for every occurrences of the roles to see what they can do. And what I really like with ReBAC is that I have a model and I can look at my model in one file and I can answer this question. I can say, okay, now tell me who you are. You are a member of an entity or you are an admin or something, and I can really see. And even project managers, they can really see what this kind of persona can do in our application just looking at the model. So I don't know if it's that you call expressiveness, but for us, because we love DDD, we love domain-driven design, we love to work closely with our product manager. This kind of model, which is very explicit, is really great for us because we can really see what we can do in our software. Really, it's all there in the model, so it's great.
Yeah, I think you brought up something interesting because when I'm thinking about ReBAC and Zanzibar and the way they describe that, so there are two things when we are talking about permissions. There are the permissions itself, the schema, like what a user with a role can do, or what is the derivation between two relationships. But there is also the data, like Gabriel is an admin and admin is allowed for something, or Gabriel is an owner of folder and folder is. So there is the schema and there is the data. And you mentioned something. Oh, wow. I see that. That's weird. Let me tag someone because I see people in the Slack that say that we have some problem with the YouTube link. So I ask Daniel to fix that. But okay, anyway, so I'll say that there is a need in my opinion, for kind of decoupling the schema from the data. And in Zanzibar, it's not described that well. How do we decouple that? What do you think about it?
Okay, so I understand what you mean. So yeah, you have you have the model in one side, and then you have the data that is needed
Mhm.
to calculate
Exactly.
your permission. Yes, and so you need to insert tuples in your database, so it can you can check your permission. And actually, it's what is complicated with ReBAC. I think it's because. When you have your model, you know what you want to do and how you express it, but then you have to insert data, like you said, and because sometimes you have
Mhm.
direct relationship, so you have the data, but sometimes it is calculated from the model, so you because of the inheritance you have in the model, you can't you can have sorry a relation, but not a tuple in the database. So yeah, there is a
Mhm.
difference, and I think it is difficult at the beginning when you discover ReBAC. You have to understand this difference between schema and data, and it can be tricky because you can sometimes you say, "Hey, I can check if the tuple exists," but you can have the tuple and not have the permission, and vice versa. So it can be really tricky at the beginning. Yes.
Yeah, I think that that's something really important that need to take in account where you're actually going to implement ReBAC because of especially at some point one of the challenges with ReBAC is the performance of the data. I think if you are not decoupling well the model from the data itself, is making it hard to manage and optimize. I'll say maybe I'll ask maybe a little implementation question. So one of the options to keep the data is keep it as file or keep it in the disk as like JSON file or something. And one of the options to keep the data is keep it in database like in SQL or MySQL. What are you using and do you recommend about it?
We are using PostgreSQL, so we are putting data into a database. Um,
Mhm.
I f- I'm not sure. I think I think it works well because we have a great response time, and we didn't even think about putting it into files. Um, I don't know. I don't know if it works without a database.
Yeah. I think that's one of the questions I actually was about to ask that later, but maybe it's a good point to ask that. Let's say that this way. So one of the challenges about managing the data itself is about consistency, right? If you want to have maybe strong consistency, so for every update you want to wait until the data is updated and then the query is returned with the good result. You can do eventual consistency that you're throwing the data and then at some point you start to get the relevant data, and then you get to the differentiation between what you want to do. If you put it in a Postgres, that means you can maybe have better strong consistency. If you're doing it with files, you maybe get better management or cheaper management, but then you need to go with probably eventual consistency because strong consistency could be take a lot of time. What type of consistency are you using and what do you recommend about?
Hmm. Actually, it's a vast topic because
Yeah,
I'm
we
not
can open that. We have the time.
I'm not sure we have the right answer, but what I can tell is that it was the main point of tension, I think, between teams, because where we are offering a central system, a centralized system. Teams were like, it's great, but I need to put data into ReBAC. I need to put tuples in your database in order
Mhm.
for you to evaluate my permission. And we were like, yeah. And they were like, yeah, but which data do I need to put
Sure.
into ReBAC? So what we came with is that some rules. So I came with this idea of minimum viable data. So basically, you need only the data for authorization decision. So, for example, if I need to say if you are a member of a company, I need to have this relationship. So I need to store in my database, authorization database, that you have a relation with a user and a company, but I don't I don't need to store all the metadata around this, like the time you joined the company, etc., etc. So I will have the data in my bounded context database, in my business database, and I will also have the data in my authorization database. So, like you said, we need to synchronize. So basically, what we do is we use Outbox pattern to do this. We did this with the data we really need to be in both system. But what's really interesting is it's that sometimes you only have data in the authorization database. For example, when you have roles, something like look like roles, like we have admin, we have entity company admins. So it's like a role, but in ReBAC. So this is only for authorization decision, because we just say, okay, these people these people are admin of this entity, and because they are admin, they have this set of permission. Okay, so we don't evaluate the role itself; we evaluate the set of permission. And so this information of admin is only stored in our authorization database, because I don't need it anywhere else. So the rule is minimum viable data, and you don't have to absorb all the data of your business or your bounded context into the authorization database. So keep it very minimum and simple. And when you do have to replicate data, what we do is we use Outbox pattern. Yes.
Got it. Actually, you just described the topic in 2 minutes, but I got so many questions to ask. Because first, I'm so happy that you're here today, because in this 2 minutes, you just bring a glimpse of how ReBAC can be complex and how you experience that,
Yes.
right? And you just opened so many topics to discuss about. So first, I understand that you're going with strong consistency, but you do a lot to make sure that the authorization data consistency is lean and small, and you can really adopt it faster. But I have a couple of questions. I'll start it one by one and not throw it all at once. So the first thing you mention, at some sort of mentioning, is that you're actually kind of duplicating data. So you don't trust the only data, you trust two sources of data. What was the main reason to decide that? Because I'm asking that because I don't have strong opinions. I get these questions a lot from users, especially the ones that came to Permit, and they want to do ReBAC because they read about it and it feels for them that it will work well for them, and they ask him, would I need to duplicate my data? Do I need to mirror it? What is the best way? So you definitely recommended to duplicate. So please expand a little on that and the intent behind that.
Yes, because the way I understand ReBAC is that before ReBAC, or if you don't have a centralized system, you need to have your authorization logic in your service, for example, and you need to have the data to make those authorization decisions. But if you transfer all your authorization logic into one service, so you centralize it, you also need the data to make those decisions. So you can say, okay, but I can call APIs or have the data another way. But to be more efficient, you need to have all the data necessary to make authorization decision locally. That's the way I understand it. It's for performance issues. So in Zanzibar, it's what they do. They have only the data needed for authorization decision in the authorization database to make to calculate your permission and authorization logic locally. So that's why you need to replicate data, and that's, for me, that's the main pain about ReBAC is this one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so you say it's a pain, but it's actually worth it because it just make it an engineering problem that I can solve with engineering pattern, but it
Exactly.
not keeps it as people problem with role explosion, which is engineering, but also people problem because they're really hard with like managing it. And the second question is actually related to the friction that you mentioned. The second question, you said that you have centralized, of course, ReBAC permission data, and you have many developers that actually use that. How do you make them engage with that? What is, I mean, from the engineering perspective, how the deployment, how the setup is looks like that allows other to send data, and from the from the soft skill, from the people perspective, how do you make them engage with this setup?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, it was it was difficult, but for
People is difficult.
yes, because yeah, all the question you are asking, they were asking the same question. Like, do I need to replicate data? I will need to have like outbox pattern or whatever patterns to be sure that we have a strong consistency. So your service is gonna be like. A stronger service. I don't know the term in English. Like all requests will have to go through your service. So if your service is down, what happens? And all this question. So it was very difficult to like sell a solution to our own team, but eventually. The main argument was just like I said before, it's when you have your authorization logic scattered between all your services, you duplicate it. So, for example, we have when you have a role and you change the permission for this role, you will need to change your authorization logic in all your services. So you need to synchronize every team to change it, and the same for data. Imagine that I have because basically it's what we had. We had like a rule, a permission that was you can do. Everything you can do in our software, you need to be a member of a company. But to calculate membership, there was a lot of rules that like company needs to have a subscription. If you are an internal staff of Agicap, you can access it, but only if the user can give you. It was a lot of rules, and every services in our ecosystem needed to re-implement this logic, so it was very complex. And when we needed to change everyone. So basically what I said to other team is like, we are taking away this, this logic from you. We are centralizing it. And you just need to call an API. Like you can have all the fine grain permission you want. It's really easy to put a new authorization in our model. So we opened our model to everyone, and everyone can do a pull request. And we went to every team to do like design session and a kata and etc. little exercise to show how it
Mhm.
works. And after that, we say, yeah, we are dealing with the complexity of ReBAC for you. The only thing you have to deal with is knowing the data you need to put in our system to be able to make those decisions, those authorization decisions, and use you know all the patterns. So it's like you said, it's just an engineering question. We know the pattern to have this consistency, so it's okay. And it was not easier.
I bet it wasn't easy because I think I remember, I mean, I never did like in this way fine-grained authorization, but I think in general, like educating people for like do the right thing is not that easy. The next question that I want to ask, so you mentioned that you give them the option to write data, but you also give them the option to do authorization queries. And one of the greatest thing about ReBAC is about filter queries and queries in general. In usual, in traditional policy engines, you usually do like this binary question. This user allowed for something, and this user allowed to this and this and this and this. But in ReBAC, you can also expose an API for query multiple
Yes.
entities. Do you have such API? Do you streamline it?
Yes, yes. I think it's what we call reverse indexing. Like I can ask.
Like reverse traversing, reverse indexing.
Yes.
Mhm.
So yes, we use it a lot actually, and because like I said, we have only data in authorization database. So when we need to have list of, for example, list of entities, companies, administrator, so we just need to query our system and say, hey, give me all the user that have this relation with this entity, or vice versa, give me all the entities that have this relation with this user.
Authorized users and authorized resources.
Yeah, so I think it's a great feature. And one of the designer of Zanzibar, they explain on Twitter that is really it's a great thing to think about when modeling a ReBAC system. It's a reverse indexing. It's very interesting. So yes,
Yeah. Yeah, we actually also wrote a lot of code about allowing reverse indexing and reverse traversing for people in our system. I want to ask, so you just streamline the API, so like users in other microservices. So for example, let me ask it in different, like let me expand on it. So I know that you work in domain-driven design, and I know that you have multiple domains in your system, and as by design, data is distributed, right? Distributed across microservices, distributed across persistent layer. So how this usual call that needs authorization filtering work? They call your service, they get the IDs, and then with the IDs, they are fetching only the allowed ones. You do like partial evaluation. How these filter queries looks in your ReBAC system?
Mm. Again, that's a great question because we are still we are still
Okay.
answering this question. But what we are doing right now, it's the first option you said. So we are querying our system to get IDs. So for example, give me the admins of this company. So we get IDs, and then the service who is asking this question is the one who has the information about the admin. So then you can consolidate ID with emails, for example, and then send it back the result to the front end or whatever. So that's the strategy we use, but it can have limits because, like you said, have a lot of body context and a lot of microservices, and sometimes you need to consolidate data from multiple body contexts. So it can be very slow because you need to first get IDs, then get emails from the identity provider, then get the date of the people join company, etc., etc. So it's actually something we experienced recently because we had to list a list of people with a lot of different permission, and we're like, this is going to be very complicated. And the main question today is how you deal with pagination in this case.
Yeah, I just want to ask about pagination. I think pagination is one of the hardest because if you're going to a database and the database already know what they should filter, then you can just use the pagination. But how is, so you already implemented pagination, you are planning to implement that?
We are trying to implement it. Yes,
What is your strategy? How does it look like?
For now, the strategy is to say the service that needs to be this listing or this query is only getting IDs from our authorization model, and then we get all the IDs because and then the service will do pagination itself. So storing the IDs, maybe we are going to put a cache, something we don't know yet. We actually are implementing it right now. So I don't think we have all the answer, but the strategy is this. So first, call the ReBAC system, get the IDs, and then get to your own database the information you need and do pagination here.
So like the ReBAC will always return the
Yeah.
whole IDs without pagination, and you will do the pagination. It just reminds me that a lot of cases where I see like tables in long tables in website, and then I see that there is a differentiation between the number they declare I should have in the table and the number of rows in the table itself. So I think there is like it is important for people to, there are two users in this chain. There are the developer who are getting the data and need to get, not developer, right? The application, get the data and need to understand like total numbers that allowed for these users, etc. And there is the actual rows that return and the end users that actually experiencing that. I think pagination is I don't think there is anything in Zanzibar that related to pagination, right? Or I'm mistaken?
No.
Yeah, I think this is a great problem to solve.
Yes.
So, and I'll be happy to hear how do you solve it later. One of the challenges that usually people, when they talk about ReBAC, they talk about performance because by design, it has some solutions and we'll get to that. But by design, ReBAC is centralized store and centralized store with hierarchies can very easy getting complex and getting really short, not short, but really slow. I'll say that I think it really depends on the model, and again, I'll be happy to hear some what you think about it. But I just want to put a story of someone I've been in a meetup, like I think 6 months ago. I met someone who has a very popular application framework, and they offer authorization that is based on OpenFGA, and he told me like, but we just need to pull it out because when we have 20 levels of hierarchy, we can get into 10 seconds time for
Wow.
authorization query, which is, I think it's actually, it must be something wrong with modeling, right? But that's clear that if you have one centralized database that is a GraphDB that need to do traversal for applications with millions or dozens of millions of entities, that's a performance bottleneck. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's a real topic, but for us, we haven't experienced it. We saw that if we model it wrong, it can impact performance. So, but we know the strategy to model it correctly so that we won't impact performance. So you have a strategy. For example, when you have a lot of hierarchy, you can cut your permission into a smaller one so it can be cached. So for example, if I say I have a permission, which is, you need member or administrator or or maybe user from entity parent and then etc. So you can have big relation, but you can split it into a smaller one. And this way, the small one can be cached and the big one can be evaluated more with more performance. So yeah, I think it depends on the engine you use for ReBAC, but for us it's OpenFGA, and we worked a lot with the OpenFGA team to have the correct modelization and to know how to modelize to have a great response time. And our model is not that complicated, so maybe it helps. But we try to keep our model simple, and but we have great response time. So
Yeah, I think first it's great that you have great response time, but I want to touch multiple points here. So first, just if you have some specific recommendation for better modeling, that's the first question. And second is, I think one of the problems with, if you're taking care about modeling, the first pattern I would think about is how to make the model support my data complexity. Because the complexities came from the data, right? The story is centralized. It's okay that the configuration is centralized, the expression of information, but when the data is getting complex, and especially in hierarchy, that's make the performance harder. Do you find places where you actually had to declare relationships that supposed to be in data, but you did it as model because you try to improve performance?
yes. Yes, yes. So yeah, my recommendation is to make a small relation so it can be cached, and to actually we did a performance campaign, and we tested one model versus another one to see the response time and how it was handling the request. And actually, you're right. You can we have relation in our model that are only here to help the calculation of other relation to help performance. Yes.
Sorry, I was muted. I think it's really interesting. I think one of the pattern that I saw lately, and we actually started to recommend on that, and I'll say that I'll give 2 words about Opal. So permit maintain an open source project that called Opal, Open Policy Administration Layer. And one of the things that Opal do is it's actually work now with OpenFGA, it's work now with OPA and CEDAR, and we have an open PR for supporting OpenFGA. Originally, Opal planned to solve the same problem but from the other perspective with Open Policy Agent, the problem of having multiple policies, because Open Policy Agent is not easy with administrating policies. So we created a project that can synchronize in real-time policies into the agent and also data into the agent, but data is less a problem with OPA. It's a problem, but less than OpenFGA. And one of the patterns that we saw people trying to use, and this is why we added that with OPA, is they say, why we need one store for our OpenFGA database if we can have multiple stores? Sometimes if we model our data right, we can have, instead of one Zanzibar store, we can have distributed or decentralized or sharding between stores and the data. Have you ever, I know that you're still using centralized OpenFGA, centralized store, but you ever get into thought of maybe having distributed stores or?
Yes, we considered it at the beginning when we were thinking about the whole system and designing it for Agicap. We were thinking about having multiple store because we have multiple products. So maybe, but in the end, our product is really around, companies, entities, and organization. So it's really linked to really one object, one resource. So it was too complex to split it into a different store, because in the end we will have to put it all together again. So
Yeah.
it was not a solution. But maybe in the future, when it will be growing, we'll consider it again. But for now, I think it's too complex for what we do.
So you have like one autoscale instance of Postgres that store everything for OpenFGA, like single store.
Yes.
It's interesting. I think that especially I will not take a long time more on this performance thing, but I think that's one of the things that actually prevent people from moving Zanzibar because they are actually afraid. Another challenge that people experiences with Zanzibar which is kind of, you can look about it as a bug, you can look about it as a feature. For some, and I think from your perspective, maybe I'm wrong, but from your perspective, it's maybe a good thing. But one of the things that is missing in Zanzibar is actually conditional policies. Since everything is determined by the data connections, if you have a conditional decision, for example, time-based decision, or even if you have a condition that is based on multiple attributes between objects. So for example, you have one resource that needs to be advertised and another resource that need to belongs to a user. And you want to allow the belongs only if another resource is advertised. And these conditions is not something that is easy to implement with Zanzibar. The pattern that we see people using is having a special nodes for declaring condition. So for example, you can have one centralized node that say, if multiple nodes are related to this node, that means the condition exists and then other can derive the role, but it's not easy to implement. How do you deal with conditional policies in your system? Or maybe let's even do it more simple. Let's say, for example, that you need time-based condition on your system, like opening hours.
Actually, in the latest version of OpenFGA, you have condition. So you can have condition in your model. So what we did, we have time-based condition. So what we did is that we have our OpenFGA, and behind in front of OpenFGA, sorry, we have a small facade service which we call ReBAC, so ReBAC of Agicap, so ReBAC, and ReBAC is exposing APIs. And one of the things we did is that ReBAC have a clock, so when you call to check permission, it calls OpenFGA, and it gives OpenFGA the current time. And then when we have a condition into our model, you can check. For example, I have one is that our staff at Agicap, they can access companies of our customers, but only for a short amount of time, because the customer give access for 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day, and then after that we say no, you can't access this company anymore. So what we do is that we have the tuple member on this company for our staff, but we have the condition that it expires at this date. And when we evaluate, we give the current time, and it's native in the OpenFGA model. You can check this.
Yeah, I actually feel like shame that I didn't know about it. Just when you say that, I just took a look, and it actually looks kind of promising. I must say that I know too much people that are attribute-based access control guys who will read this page and immediately tell you how limited is this condition model. But I think for most of the use cases, no, I mean,
Yeah, yes,
I believe for most of the use cases, I just put a link for OpenFGA condition if you want to read about it. I think for most of the use case that's valid, and I really definitely going to try that. Do you think, as a pattern, assuming that there are more conditions and stuff like that, and we saw some using multiple policy engines, is that a pattern that you also considered at some point, like put the OpenFGA as a store for, let's say, open policy agent, and then you can have multiple, like one more traditional policy engine and then OpenFGA for the more data-driven engine?
Yeah, we consider it, but actually our product doesn't need that. We try to keep it simple, and we don't have the use case. Even for conditional access, we only have one use case. So for now, it's okay for us. We don't have this much complexity. So maybe in the future, why not? But for now, we don't have the need for for the OPA.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We actually before we had the support with OpenFGA, so the OpenFGA is now supported in Opal, and we try also to put it in Permit. We're doing ReBAC with Opal, and I mean it has pros and cons, but at least at this point we can offer one model that includes attributes and relationship. And I think for some, the conditions make them think twice, because ReBAC has two things. First, you need to commit to the data and all the aspects that it brings with. And the other is about decide to the null leverage condition. I saw a question from Serge who is asking about, isn't using multiple PDPs just an anti-pattern? So I'll give you to answer that if you have any thought of that, but I'm thinking maybe Serge is asking that from the permit perspective of using multiple PDP. So after you'll answer that, I'll give the permit perspective of using multiple PDPs.
I don't know. I never tried actually to use multiple PDPs, so I don't know if it's an anti-pattern. I think it adds complexity. So if you need this complexity and you can deal with it, why not? But I really think that for most of software, you don't need this kind of complexity. You just need one.
Yeah,
I think.
I'll say my point about using multiple PDPs. I'll say that I think for many cases you don't need multiple PDPs, as Pauline mentioned. I think at the end, if you have the bandwidth, if you have the capacity or the opportunity for having if you have the capacity for having well-designed and well-defined authorization in your organization, like the one that Pauline got, then you can have decisions that driven and also propagated to your engineers. And then you may be considered not using multiple PDPs. But usually you're using multiple PDPs because you're trying to have seamless deployment to your product, to your existing ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And the multiple PDPs is something that you just must have, right? You don't have an option because you're already using cloud native architecture, you're already using distributed system, you're already using decentralized system. Authorization decision, it's something that could happen like dozens of times for one API call, and you really need to keep it fast. And this is what makes you to use multiple PDPs. So use multiple PDP for most of the cases is not a thing of choice. It's something you must, right? Because you're enforced to use multiple PDPs. And then you can't say it's actually an anti-pattern, in my opinion. Especially when you actually need to combine multiple models. Like you don't need only to drive your authorization by data. I think that's also a privilege that they got at Agicap, that they can say, okay, all our permissions is driven by data and all our permissions are modeled with expressive model. Not all the organization getting this privilege. Not all the organization has the power to say, okay, we are now centralizing all the data for our policy. Many of them can't just say that because no one will use the service, right? So I think multiple PDPs, and I see you're right, multiple PDP solutions at the same time that could fit the auth governance. I'll say that from that perspective, the way that we manage multiple PDPs in permit is really trying to solve this problem. I'll take the multiple PDPs. So of course, if your policy is defined by attributes and context, like if it's defined, yeah, I see that Or said, I think it got an answer for multiple instances. I'll say that at the end, it's a question of design pattern. You need to design the way that you deploy multiple PDPs. Opal, Permit Open Source, and Permit itself has great patterns for consistency and governance of multiple PDPs. You can just centralize the rule, you can decentralize the data, you can shard the data, you have just pattern that solve you this governance. And I'll be happy to continue chat about it if you'd like. Again, there is the Slack channel. Yeah, you see that in the top. So if you want to join there, we'll be really happy to continue the chat about it. But I really want something that I actually promised in the agenda. I have a lot of things that I really want to talk with you about, Pauline. Maybe we'll get a chance on the stage next week. But we left only with 7 minutes. So first, I'll say if you have questions, it's a great time to ask. But one of very important thing for me that I want to chat and hear your insight about it is I am now a staff engineer or principal, technical leader, and I want to roll out an engineering plan for my organization to adopt FGA and ReBAC. How will you do that?
Actually, it's what I did, so I can answer. What we did first is we looked at the solution, what we wanted to do, and what was our need. So we chose ReBAC because that was what we needed for our business. But like I said, maybe it's not appropriate for other business and use cases. But ReBAC was really appropriate for us because, like we said, we are fans of domain-driven design. So we wanted to have something that is expressive and we can use with our product manager, and we can see, we can model with them. So that's why we choose this solution, to be able to modelize this. So the first thing we did is with my team, we tried a lot of things. We tried to modelize with OpenFGA, with other tool, and when we were convinced that we had the solution for our company, we went to see every team in our company, and we did a little exercise. So a little kata. You know kata in English? I'm not sure. Coding dojo? Yeah. Yeah, we did a little coding exercise with product manager and developers to show them what we are going to do. So it's why it was very interesting, because they had a lot of questions, and they were like, "Oh, it's a new way to think about it." So we did like a little campaign with all our team to show the new way of thinking things, and then we build the system, and we started to migrate all permission to this new system. And when this was done, we tried a new relation, new permission, a new thing. And the main thing for us was to give a lot of autonomy to other team, to say, hey, we are building this system, but it's a system for you. You will be using it. So we are here to help you with that. We are here to help you modelize and do pull requests and whatever you want. But you are the one that are responsible for your data and for your permission. So we are only dealing with the service, but now that it's here, it's you. You have to put the data inside. You have to put your relation, and you are responsible for the data you put in the system. So I think, I think the methodology was making a tour with all the team so making sure they understand the new way of modeling permission, first thing, then building the system with a lot of automation, so nothing manual, we automate everything, and then giving a lot of autonomy to other teams.
Yeah, I think this autonomy for other things and let them do everything is a bidirectional commitment. You expect a commitment for them, but you also need to be committed to provide a very detailed solution, explain everything, document everything. I bet you did that too, right?
Exactly, yes. Yes, I didn't mention it, but of course, documentation was a big part of the process, and being able to answer demands.
Yeah. I see that we get a last question from Serge. The problem, and we left 3 minutes, so I think we can answer that. And so the problem is reality of corporate companies. Corp are working with legacy app costs and new app. New apps will nicely work with ReBAC plus PDP. Legacy app may progressively migrate. Do you agree with that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Serge, I have nothing but agree with that. I know that Agicap, and I had a chat about it with Toma about the way they grow and the amount. I think they can consider a very large corporate. So if they did it, I think many can do that, even large corporate. Yet is not that legacy. But I think the point of Serge is true for every kind of software, right? Every kind of software we need to do like lift and shift. We need to choose the right pattern of how we migrate for things like ReBAC. And I think, Sergio, your point about ReBAC and the point of PDPs is something that is really important. When you're considering when you consider migration to a ReBAC system, and especially if you have like everything you mentioned, it's super important to consider the progressive way of migration into ReBAC. So thanks for the wisdom and the comment, Serge. I think that was super important. If you want to also talk about ReBAC progressive migration in large corporation, I'll be happy to. I try to do we need guests for this live stream. So we're getting to the end of the time. That was super fast, and I'm looking at my list. I just get to the half point. As a reminder, again, next week at KubeCon, we are going to have the greatest policy engine showdown. I'm going to ask Pauline, of course, but I'm going also to have Andres from OpenFGA, Joy from StrongDM, who works with Cedar, Tyler, who works a long time with Open Policy Agent, and Omri Gazit, who is leading Topaz, which is also using Open Policy Agent for ReBAC. And I think it will be super cool. I mean, can't wait to meet you all next week at the KubeCon. I'll also remind that we also have a live stream from the KubeCon, from the floor. I'll be there with our CEO. We'll talk about what happened this year in the cloud native realm. Yeah. And we'll have a lot of fun at the KubeCon. So For all, thank you very much and see you next week. Thanks, Pauline.